北広島の次は新札幌に停まります。
The next stop is Kita Hiroshima. The stop after Kita Hiroshima is Shin Sapporo.
Hi, my name is Phoenix and this is TFL Design, and this is part 2 of my trip to Asia. You might notice I'm a bit perkier than last time, and that's because I'm no longer jet lagged, or at least a little bit less. Last where I left off, I had gotten off the plane from Taiwan to Hokkaido, the northern region of Japan, and boy was it cold there. It was like 3 to 5 feet of snow everywhere around us, and we were rushing to get to a place that was pretty secluded outside of major cities to get to a newly built onsen establishment that had dinner for us starting at 8 p.m. We were hoping our plane and everything would land on time and for our connections and trains to get there on time and possibly be there around 6 p.m. But unfortunately, due to snow and the fact that we were trying to figure out how to get from place to place, we got there almost exactly at 8 o'clock, and I have to thank the incredible taxi driver that drove us there. His skills in the snow was amazing, and I cannot believe that he was able to drive so steadily at a pretty good speed, and we somehow got there just, a few minutes late for our dinner. As you can see, the style of dinner we were rushing to is a traditional Japanese multi-course dinner called a kaiseki. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. And you will see that throughout my trip I will have quite a few of these, as I stayed at quite a few different onsens, and each one of them offered this as a breakfast and a dinner. And being our first meal after landing, we were very hungry but tired at the same time. And I'll just let you enjoy some of the foods here. This is not my first kaiseki. I've had some in the past, but this is the first time I had it in Japan. The staff that served it to us didn't really speak that much English, so sometimes in some of these tourist onsen areas, they'll have like a sheet of paper with English on it, and they'll just point to it to try and explain what it is we're eating, where it is we're staying, where the hot springs / onsens are in comparison to our suites and rooms, for example, and what time breakfast or dinner would start. Usually we only stayed at these for one night each, as it gets pricey, obviously. We never stayed in one onsen area more than one night. So obviously, the earlier we got there, the more we could use the facilities, versus if we arrived there late, we would only be able to take 1 or 2 onsen baths before moving on the next day, since checkout was usually between 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. In a few of the onsen areas, they did have a few staff that did speak English rather fluently. In tourist area, this tends to happen, although if we move to a more rural area, obviously they would not speak as much or as well. You might notice that we're not wearing any shoes, and that's because they make you take off your shoes, or in our case, our really dirty wintry boots, at the very front of the hotel, and then they offer you slippers for you to use throughout the entire hotel. But when we first came in, we were just wearing socks, and it was kind of funny going into the elevator for the first time with no shoes on. So if you're not familiar with onsens, onsens are hot springs, and those are water that are naturally heated under the earth, and they pump it up for us to have baths. In this specific onsen, every room had a private bath so that you could have your own bath, and so that it wasn't a public bath where, other strangers and whatever would be around as well. So the rules for onsens are, before you get in, you shower yourself, you scrub yourself, remove all the dirt and grime from yourself before going into the onsen bath, where you would soak. This is especially the rule before you go into the public ones where other people will be sharing the same baths as you. Obviously, I did not film any of the public or private onsen stuff, as you know, it is private, and obviously you do not bring a camera into it, but basically the rule is you shower yourself off, you clean off all your dirt and grime before you go to the baths, and everybody just kind of like stares away from each other. And if your onsen happens to be in a very scenic area where you could see waterfalls and stuff like that, you tend to like stare at that and just enjoy the view while you soak for a maximum of 15 minutes is recommended. You don't want to overheat yourself. Hot springs have like a healing factor because it speeds up your metabolism. So I had a giant bruise prior to coming to Japan, and I watched it slowly just basically disappear over the few days that I had, submerged myself into onsens. It was quite good. Because it speeds up your metabolism, you are extremely thirsty and hungry after you get out. So it's recommended that you drink a lot of water, which they supply for you. Outside every onsen is like a water dispenser or something, which, is a good idea to keep hydrated. And you always feel the need to like eat a large meal shortly afterwards. In this case, we had our meal first because we were late before jumping into our private onsens. Every onsen we went to had a different breakfast time. They usually come in slots. So they would offer you, a half-hour block between like 6:30 to 7:30, 6:30 to 7, or 7:30 to 8, stuff like that. We would always choose the latest ones because we were extremely tired all the time and like to wake up pretty late in the day and wake up as late as possible. They usually have the stuff prepared before you even get there, so like all the pickled stuff would be there on a table. Sometimes it'd be covered with a piece of paper and whatnot before you arrive, and you lift up the paper and then you start your meal, and then they'll serve you the other dishes, the warmer dishes, such as the soup, the rice, maybe the main protein, and whatever it is you are grilling or boiling, or whatever it is that they have on the side for you. And as we left in the morning, you can see just how much snow and how cold it was. Like I said, the driver was amazing the night before. Somehow they were able to navigate through all this. So after this first onsen in Josenkai, we went to Sapporo City, where we would be staying for a little bit. I believe it was like 1 or 2 nights or something like that. Before heading to our next Airbnb, we stopped by a few ice and snow sculpture exhibitions. These were in public squares, and you just went and, enjoy the cold and stuff. Although, I'll have to admit that it wasn't that spectacular to behold until around nighttime when all the lights and stuff came on. In our first Sapporo stay, this Airbnb that we had a surprising amount of beds and room. There's only 4 of us, but it was a place big enough to fit 12, and had like 3 or 4 different bathrooms. The toilets and the bathrooms are always separate in these places, so if you occupied a toilet, you wouldn't be bothering anybody that would need the sink and whatnot. At night, we went to the ice sculpture area of Sapporo, and we were actually there on the last day. You can see it's super busy, and it was slightly snowing, which was really pretty for pictures and things like that.
Because it was suspiciously like unmonetized for an attraction.
Yes, it's a phoenix. And because it's a tourist area, you got to see a lot of cafes that really wanted your business. Hot dog and rocks. The next city we visited in Hokkaido was a place called Otaru. It's known for its like seafood and stuff like that. We just went to the morning seafood markets just to check things out. You can see how much the snow has piled everywhere and how everything is expertly placed to the side. As you can see here, they actually don't use salt on the ground. That way it doesn't damage any of the cars or rusts them or destroys the pavement and stuff like that. It's actually gravel, which is ingenious. And you will see in other cities they use different methods. In this city, they use gravel, but I've not seen them use salt anywhere. We climbed all the way to the top of a hill to find a rather empty shrine area. It was only local people going there to pray and stuff. It wasn't a huge tourist area, so we were able to take a lot of really beautiful and serene photos here, and we spent like an hour at the top. And shortly after, it began snowing again, making for more pretty pictures. At night, we went to the riverside area to see all the snow lanterns that had been placed around. Different shops from around the city or just local volunteers would make cute little lanterns and light them out of snow. So the thing about this trip is that it required us to have a lot of good luck and timing in regards to catching a train or catching a bus here and there. Japanese subways are almost always on time, like 99.9% of the time. So it's very important that you exit quickly and enter quickly so that you don't delay the train in any way. In some places, if we missed a bus or if we missed a train, it would require us to, wait like another 10 or 15 minutes to connect to the next one. So it was super important that we made it on time, and I would say we were pretty lucky because other than our initial landing, we were never late to any of the things we had planned. Prior to going to Japan, we had bought a JR pass from within our country, Canada, so that we could actually access reserved seating that was only offered to basically tourists and people with passports. And this JR pass allowed us to use all the JR lines, which runs through a lot of cities in Japan. It's not it doesn't encompass every single line in Japan, but a large portion of it. So having to pay 600 Canadian dollars, we actually saved like about $400 or $500 in doing so, because if we were to reserve these seats or buy these tickets individually from train to train, it would have costed a lot more than to have bought a single pass that allowed us to ride each time. The funny thing about these passes are it's actually a physical ticket with a hole punched into it, so that you would feed into the machine and then have to grab it on the way out. As advanced as Japan is, some of their technology is strangely old school. And in jumping from city to city in our trip, we had to make a stopover. And so we arrived at a city called Hakodate, which is not a tourist area. And so for this one night, we were actually in a rather contemporary looking hotel, despite the entire place being very rural and simple looking. And this place had really futuristic bunk beds for the four of us to stay one night in. It was actually kind of nice. And there was a concierge in the daytime, but after 5 p.m., there would be no one there. And so when you checked out in the morning, you just had to leave and they would just take your word for it, I guess. Although I'm sure they have cameras to check and stuff. In Hakodate, we were looking for places to eat, and strangely, it was kind of expensive because of the super fresh seafood we had. The first place we had was this area that had the live seafood next to us. I had the freshest crab I've ever had in this place. You didn't have to put any sauce on it and it tasted incredible. And despite the first place being super expensive, we were still a little hungry, so we went for grilled meats. Yeah, baby. During this entire trip, I took a lot of trains and a lot of bullet trains. I didn't record them all, but you can imagine this is basically a train geek's paradise. Well, this concludes part 2 of my Taiwan/Japan trip. This part was entirely in the Hokkaido prefecture. The next city I go to will be still a cold city, but it will be outside of Hokkaido, and it'll be another onsen city. If you would like to see more of my trip, follow, subscribe, and yeah, leave a comment on your thoughts so far. Bye-bye now.